can't sprint. You just can't. So let's try to find some things that you can do now so that you can safely sprint eventually. Remember what sprinting is. Sprinting is, can you run maximally? Can you run as fast as you possibly can? No, you can't. Almost certainly you can't. So what are the things that you can do to try to prepare yourself for the capacity to do that in the future, whether that's next month, next year, or in 10 years?
Olympic Games, before the 70-some Olympic medals, Stuart McMillan spun records. I had no idea, by the way, before I ran the show today, and I've known the guy for 10 years. And wow, when I heard that, I was like, wow, everything kind of clicks in terms of what makes this man click. He built ALTIS sprint program that is on the frontier, frankly. And, the early years when I'd known him, this is when the World Athletic Center would just become into being, I called it organized chaos on the episode. And he would counter that, actually it was just chaos. The company nearly broke, $1 million in debt. And what stands today rose from the wreckage, wiser and stronger. You may have caught Stuart on the Huberman podcast recently, taking sprinting out of the elite track and handing it to everyone. For decades, he worked at the tip of the spear and still does. That is advising the fastest humans alive. But in parallel, his eye is now on the rest of us. So this one is about speed and about how almost no one is doing it and how perhaps more people could get to that full speed sprinting capacity, or at least some version of it. Let's dive in.
I started DJing in 1985-ish or so. And then I had a radio show that I started in 1998 in Calgary. And I had that radio show until I moved to the UK in 2010. And that radio show still goes today with my former DJ partner.
What's it called?
It's called Level the Vibes.
Level the Vibes. Is that the original name?
That's the original name. We started in 1998, Level the Vibes. It's a sort of a foundation reggae radio show. It was a popular show. It did really good in Calgary. Still rolling.
If it's time.
Yeah, that's
I can check that out.
That's where my Instagram handle comes from, Finger Mash. That was my DJ name.
That makes me I was not, we were talking about how curious I was, and that's why I'm running this podcast. I was always curious, but why is it Finger Mash? I just never asked. I was like, anyway, wow, that just totally opens up a world of explanation.
So okay, we're going to talk about DJing now for the next hour.
No, I want to know how you went from DJing to coaching coaching Olympians to 70 medals. How does that transition happen? Now I know a little bit. I met you, just for context. I remember I met you as you were transitioning in what was the World Athletic Center, which was to become ALTIS, because we were connected through, a mutual friend or athlete. Alex, who was one of your Olympians, he competed in skeleton. We were training partners in college. And he's like, oh, I found this really cool guy who I actually don't want to introduce you to because I don't think you're going to like each other. He's either you're going to really like each other or you're just not going to like each other because you're just too much alike. So I'm afraid to introduce you. And so anyway, here we are, liking each other or not. And, he convinced me to come down because he needs a training partner. I'm done. I'm done college and I'm just finishing my postdoc, and I'm like thinking about the next thing. I'm like, sure, I've never had a vacation in my life, and this sounds amazing. And that's how we met. Like back when, what was that? 2014, 2015, the first World Center. It was branded at the time. I actually have my apprenticeship coaches book that you guys wrote, like that prototype. Thank goodness for the days of AI. I leverage a lot of that insight today, the warm-up protocols, the nutritional insights, the self-therapy, performance therapy. And it was just such a beautiful kind of alpha version of, I think, what you guys are building now, and what I've heard as like the kind of speed Bible. But it was like really this elusive thing to do speed power. And you guys actually built a playbook from it that I don't even want to call it a playbook because it did so much more than crystallize it. It for me anyways, it opened it up into like a full integration to how I train now at 40 something, 46, right? Like sprint drills are very much a part of my everyday movement, different goals now. But yeah, that was my introduction to you and the likes of Dan Paff. But This is about me. It's about you. How did we go from the finger mash to the CEO of ALTIS? And I'd love to hear that transition moment for you.
Yeah, at first, like thinking back to those times, and that must have been 2014 or early 2015 because we
Yeah,
rebranded as Nautilus in September of 2015.
there you go.
And I think back to the things that we were doing in 14 and 15, and as it is, I think every decade or every 5 years or so, you look back to what you were doing in the past, and you can't help but shake your head. But you also, as you said, right? And I'm reminded of this anytime that I talk to somebody who came to an event or had a conversation with us a decade ago or 5 years ago. Like it was cool. Like you're
Cool.
always looking back, and if you're always trying to do cool things and push the boundaries of things, I don't think you're ever going to be that settled, and you'll always look back in the past and kind of have to give your head a shake. But also because you've got that type of way about you, you're always kind of doing cool things as it is. So even though I look back to that time, it's over a decade ago now, and said, like, I wish you could come down and spend some time with us now. Like we're way better now, but maybe we're not. I don't know. It's just different.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's I think about that a lot.
Well, you
But
guys were you had like like it was organized chaos. Like you had like shot putters and discus and sprinters and middle
no,
distance back
no, it
then.
was it was nothing organized about that chaos.
You had trackside therapy, people getting acupuncture, like right on the track. Like it was like pit crew for F1 racing. Like it
Yeah.
looked like that from the outside. Like for me,
Yeah, it was straight up chaos. Like that was
yeah.
one of the lessons that we learned early days, right? We tried to grow too big, too quick, too fast. We knew all the things that we wanted to do. We knew all the things that was wrong with the system. We knew
Mm.
better. We can implement it all right now. Let's go. And we did it all way too fast. And it was chaos. It was just straight up chaos. And we tried to organize it best we could, but we couldn't. We couldn't. And it almost broke us. It kind of broke us as a company. We were able to, the new Altis now kind of rose out of the ashes of the old Altis that ended up $1 million in debt. And we came out of that, and we're bigger and better and stronger and wiser for it now, 10 years later. But yeah, it was just straight up chaos. But it was fun. And I don't regret any of that time at all. It's like we had, as I said, like we were just in such a hurry to make changes and to do the things that we wanted to do. Now it's the advice that I give everybody. Just be patient, just slow down a little
Mm.
bit. It's going to take some time. You want to do some cool things? Great. Let's put together a plan on how to do that in a patient and progressive way. Just like training, you can't go from running 10-5 to 10 flat overnight, and you can't go from DJing reggae music to being, a coach who's coached at 10 Olympics overnight either. That takes years and decades. So
As chaotic as it was, it wasn't even just your athletes. You had athletes coming from all over the world. I remember reading a stat somewhere, and I don't know if I'm making this up, but I thought it was something like at 2016 Olympics, if Altis was considered a country, they would have placed fourth in the world in the track events in terms of the people that walked. Now, is that a fabrication or is that real? Because that's some
oh,
pretty amazing per capita
I don't- yeah, I
results.
don't know which what that is. We had a lot of athletes there from a lot of different
Yeah.
countries, which was really cool, right? I think we had 35 or 38 athletes from 19 or 20 countries in the 2016 games in Rio. So that was really cool. Like
Right.
that was the apex of the chaos. We had 108 full-time athletes, resident athletes with us in Phoenix. And
Mm.
at any one moment in time, 40 to 50 visiting athletes. So you've got a track that has 150-ish athletes on it every day, all of their coaches and all the therapists and all the visitors. Like it was, there's some days we had over 200 people out there. Fun, but I'm glad we're not doing that anymore.
And I remember stepping out there, and I had never heard of you, so I didn't know what to think, because I was basically like I said, mentioned, retired my college sprinting days, but I did know Dan Paff because of the Canadian 4x1 Olympics, like the '96 Donovan and crew, and I remember being like, when I met Dan, being super nervous. I've never been nervous to meet anybody, and I was just blown away. Like, that statement they say, like, never meet your heroes. I was like,
Uh,
that's an instance where I can honestly disagree. I was like, wow, like that Yeah, that man is an incredible, mentor. And I wonder if you could tell me a little bit about your working relationship, like how you came to know him, because I think you guys were both in the UK together. Is that right? Did you spend some overlap there? I know you obviously both had affiliation with Canada, but how did that kind of come to be, like almost like kind of, well, if I, look at Altus from the outside and I look at a lot of stuff Dan's doing and you're doing, I see a lot of really good synergy there that's come from that relationship. So how did that get started?
Yeah, that started with Donovan. Oh, I
Did
first
okay.
Donovan in 1993 when he was a above average sprinter, top 4, top 5 in Canada. He had been recruited by the Canadian bobsled team to try out for bobsled.
Okay.
So, yeah, he
Wow.
had he had zero interest in doing bobsled.
Yeah.
Zero. One of the best therapists in Canada at the time was based in Calgary. And the Canadian bobsled team said, "Hey, we'll fly out to Calgary if you come and, try out." And he wanted some therapy from this therapist. So that's what made him come out to Calgary. Now, I was gone at the time. I wasn't even in town. And I got a call from a friend of mine. His name's Ken Rose, who is friends with Donovan. And Ken said, "Hey, I've got this buddy coming in town for a couple of weeks, and you're not in town. You mind if he stays in your place?" Yeah, no problem. Absolutely. So Donovan was staying at my spot before I even met him. And then I came back to town and met Donovan. We became, fast friends. And, a couple of years later, he started actually running really fast, obviously. And I had started through that and kind of through my relationship with Donovan, actually getting more and more interested in sprinting and coaching of sprinting. And he said, "You know what, like if you're really serious about this, you need to come down and meet my coach, Dan Papp." So, all right. So in 1995, I think, either 95 or 96 in the spring or something, I think in the spring of 95 or 96, I took a group of athletes down to Austin, Texas, where Dan was assistant coach and where he had a professional group, which included Donovan and Bruni Saran and a few others, Glenroy Gilbert, who's now the relay coach. And yeah, I met Dan and I had the same response you did. Like I
Mhm.
was nervous. Dan doesn't do much on first impression to allay those nerves. Like he's
Mhm.
very stoic. He doesn't say
Mhm.
much. Stands there. You ask him a question, he barely looks at you. But eventually you understand that, oh, he's thinking about it. And this
Mhm.
pause is not him ignoring you. He's actually trying to find a way to get the answer across to you well. So
Mhm.
it's I met him as I said, in 1995 through Donovan, and we stayed in touch basically since then. I would take my group down there for 2 or 3 or 4 weeks every spring, or most springs, many springs. This was pre-texting, pre-cell phone, so we'd maybe have a phone call every 2 or 3 months. Most awkward phone call of the year, always. You've met Dan. You know what he's like in person. Try Dan over the phone when you can't see him, and is he dead? Is he passed out? Has he hung up on me? Like, Dan, are you there? So it was great, and eventually, I'd had enough of coaching by 2009. I was going to move on and do something else, and I was just going to finish up with a group of bobsledders and skeleton athletes that I was training towards the Vancouver Whistler Olympic Games in 2010. I said, as soon as these games are over, I'm done. I'm out. I'm going to go do something else. But then Dan called me in, I think, September of 2009. I said, "I just took this gig in the UK, center director of Lee Valley Training Center in London. I need some help. Are you interested in coming over?" And I said, "Yeah, absolutely." And then the day after the Olympic Games finished, I think the last day of the games was February 28th. And on March 1st, I was on a plane on the way to London to work with Dan in the UK for UK Athletics, and essentially have been together ever since.
So, I mean, Dan is known for the way he works. Well, I haven't seen him not. I haven't seen him fall short of helping anybody achieve excellence, any discipline. As you say, you are in the presence of greatness, and you can't help becoming great. But as it relates to track and field, I mean, I know him best for his work in jumps, some work with multis, but overwhelmingly with sprinters and with speed power. Is that an accurate
Yeah,
understanding?
Dan came up in a time where you were a track and field coach,
Right.
and you needed to have the
A school
skills,
teacher, right?
and a school
Yeah.
teacher.
Yeah.
He needed to have the skills that went across the event group. So he started off, I think, pole vault, and then got into
Yeah.
the other jumps and the throws, and then eventually got into the sprints. But I think the sprints came out of being a coach for long jump. you're doing a long jump, you got to sprint to get to the board. So we got to learn more about that. He's more, he's talked all the time about the importance of being a generalist or a neo-generalist as a coach, and how coaching is that. It's the ultimate neo-generalist profession. So it's, I don't know if you'd say he's just power speed. Like, he's across all of the track and field events in track and field. So whether they're endurance, jumps, throws, or sprints. In fact, the sprints became his least favorite over the course of time. And that's how I ended up in the UK, because he didn't want to coach the sprinters. He was more interested in the throwers and the jumpers. And he said, hey, I've got a bunch of sprinters that want to come. Why don't you come over and help me? And that's how I ended up. And then, even through that, right, when, he's no longer coaching track and field athletes every day, and retired after the 2016 Olympic Games, but is still coaching every day. Most of Dan's work now is as a consultant in team sports. So he still works, remotely with a few Paralympic athletes in the sprints and the jumps. But most of his work now is in consulting in health, performance, medicine, in NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball, European soccer, across all aspects and all sorts of challenges and problems that people have. He lives, he's really lived the ethos of a neo-generalist. He can have in-depth conversations, as you know, with everybody on the health and performance team, every single level. So he's extremely valuable. He's been an extremely valuable mentor for me, for the entire ALTIS staff, and for literally hundreds, maybe thousands of coaches, therapists, sports psychologists, nutritionists, sports scientists, whatever, all over the world, across multiple sports for now, 50, 60 years, depending on, every time you ask Dan how long he's been coaching, it goes up by a year. So it's, I think he's been coaching now for longer than he's been alive, if you ask him.
I love it. So, okay. So you stepped in and you took over the speed side of things. I've been, looking forward to asking this question. What's the biggest misconception about speed and speed power?
Yeah, it's tough for me.
It doesn't have to be one, by the way.
Yeah, like, I don't do great with those kind of questions, because I don't live in the world of misconceptions, and I don't live in this world that's outside of this specific world that I'm in. So I don't know what people's conceptions or misconceptions are, right? So all I understand is what I see on maybe social media. Say, well, that's a misconception. Is it? I don't know. I don't know if that's real or whether it's.
Let me reframe it. What does it mean to embody speed?
Embody speed.
Yeah, for the athlete to really embody speed and power.
Well, embody is carrying a lot of weight in that. Embodiment to me means that it's part of your being. So you're born to do this thing. Like, this is part of you. It's hard to separate this thing that you can do with the thing that you are and who you are. So the embodiment of, in this case, speed is you're at your best, you're feeling your best when you're expressing your full potential explosively, powerfully, with maximal velocity, and all of these different words that you can come up with that's around speed and power. So that's, for me, the embodiment of speed. And it's one of the things that really drew me to speed. I start off as a strength and conditioning coach, as you know, and my frustration, I love strength and conditioning. I love strength. I love hypertrophy. I love putting together programs and periodization and all these different things that at the time were kind of brand new in Canada, right? This is early 90s, when we're just trying to figure out what this industry meant, never mind the profession of strength and conditioning, which didn't really even exist. But over the course of time, you see, okay, I'm getting this person stronger. They're getting more powerful. They're getting faster. But we can't see necessarily right away, explicitly, how this is actually impacting their performance in their sport. You can make the assumptions, but is it really doing anything? And you don't really get to see that until you're working with sports where that is the sport. And that's what drew me first and foremost to bobsled. Like Bob said, that's it. That's the sport. Big, fast, and strong. If you're big, fast, and strong, you're a great bobsledder. Like, immediately, because that is it. There's no skill element to it, really. Like, any idiot can push a bobsled. Like, it's not a hard skill to learn. You can learn how to. I've coached people that within 3 months they have an Olympic medal. Like, it's not hard to become if you've got the capacity. It's really easy to learn the coordinative aspect to push a bobsled. Now, that became then the gateway to what I'm doing now, which is work with elite sprinters, where that is the true essence of the embodiment of everything that comes around. to being an elite sprinter. It's one of those things you've either got or you don't. And if you don't, it's a really, really challenging thing to develop over time.
I mean, I think where I was going with the misconceptions was really more along and why I corrected with and maybe overcorrected with, like, how does one embody it? I think it's getting more to like the reductionist account of, of how speed is thought to work versus how it actually does. So I'm talking about cues like, running on your toes or cheek to cheek, or, I mean, if you even go back to before all the words make it messy, you see kids on the playground and they start to overreach by any means necessary. A common one you see is like they'll like throw their head back or hold their breath, and it's like it's this really interesting thing where it's maximal effort. That seems to be like something that is like when you're as young as they start lining up kids in elementary school to race. It's like you kind of just hold your breath and go and hang on. But one of the things that I've come to appreciate over time, and I was able to do this because of my own coach that I didn't meet until my third year of university. So if you can believe it, I think I've told you the story. I was a walk-on track athlete only because I needed to move to think. I can't think without moving. That was my ADD medication, if you will. Like I do my work on the track, walking around with my books because the library would kill me. And before that, I would also work out a lot of personal stuff too with physical movement. So boxing was what I had done previously. So, I went to university and I was like, what sport can I do where it's like socially acceptable to spend 20 hours a week doing it? And I don't really want to be in the weight room. I like the weight room, but for what it can do, aesthetically, for what it can do from just a pure kind of strength and power, but I don't want to be in there. Like, what would it be for? What would be its purpose? And anyway, so, as a walk on and I remember meeting my coach, Garnet, my third year, because there wasn't much structure to the program, whereas at university, Dalhousie University in Halifax, Nova Scotia. And I remember meeting Garnet, who's actually a friend of, or a teammate of mine. I competed on the Canadian lifeguard team, World Life Saving Championship in Italy, and I was a quote unquote sprinter amongst swimmers. So I was really fast. So that's not really a sprinter, but I looked like a ringer. And I had some like natural speed capability, but of course when I get on the track, I wasn't really much of anything. And so it was around, my third year I met him. I was running the 60 was my thing. I was ranked like 7th in the country, right? I was just barely on the team. And I meet this guy Garnet. He's this at the time 70-year-old sprint Trinidadian guru. And I remember just meeting him in the library, and he's like sitting down, old school, like Dan, actually, in a way. And he's got his like notepad and his pen and paper, or I should say pencil. And he's like, what are your goals? And I was like, oh, I don't even know a goal. Like, I mean, here in university, I'm going to get the grade, whatever. But I never thought goals applied to, track and field. Just kind of going through emotions. Like, oh, well, I want to be on the team and I want the jacket. And he's like, are you serious? Like, he's like, why not the Olympics? I'm like, well, I'll give you all kinds of reasons why not. And he's like, well, we're going to do it as if, it's not out of the realm of possibility. And anyway, he just taught me how to goals and future pace. But on the topic of sprinting, he had this workout that he developed, which was, what he would, it's 20 times 100, but it was adapted for 60 meters. But it's not like how you would think. It was like you would walk the first 60, count your strides. He'd ask you how you felt. And you walk a little faster, then you walk a little faster. And then by the time when you're at like 12, 13, 14, he's asking you to run like specific times. He's like, okay, run the next one in, 6.9 seconds. I'm like, I've never run faster than 7.3. How am I going to do that? Right. And it happened. Now, I'm not going to say that this magically happens for everybody. I mean, this was just probably a reflection of how I was doing everything wrong, trying too hard. That kid who throws their head back and holds their breath. So he found like this, I guess, this psychosomatic block in me that was, maybe childhood, way I carry stress, whatever. But he really helped, unlock that in 3 months. You mentioned that 3 months, 700th in the country to 7th in the country, all on like cues and, things that this is university level, 7th in the country, just to be clear. And, we got there all on, cues and introducing like specific drills, like a lot of the drills that you guys taught at ALTIS, but at specific points in that 20 times 60 meter workout. And, I shit you not, we would train twice a week and that was it. So for me, like that was like, now I'm not saying that's how all sprinters train, but something that was me reinforced that view. I remember like, again, my first encounter at Phoenix at ALTIS in Paradise Valley there, just seeing all those sprinters just looking so chill, like kind of like lions. We're in the desert, right? So it's like super hot, but they're in the shade and they're relaxing. And that period of time in their training, like they may be at the track for an hour and a half, 2 hours, but there's really like, I don't know, a minute of work. So that's how it would seem from the outside. Like, well, they're only like the total time that they were there, they only did sprinting for like maybe like a hand, like 10 minutes. It's all this drill stuff and this movement and this coordination, right? So I guess what I'm referring to is like something that I caught was your recent Hooverman interview, right? Where you were taking the ideas or the principles of sprinting and taking them outside of the athlete and, bringing them to the general population. And I think we can both agree that there's a ton of benefit to, can you do some form of sprinting or reflexive movement, into your later years, and how might that be good for you for all these various reasons? But at the same time, the way a generalist might go at, or sorry, not a generalist, a gen pop might go at this, you can really get hurt doing it, right? So I think that's really the misconceptions that I was pointing to when I asked that initially. And so maybe like some people have come through the right NCAA program and they're already great. But one of the other things I noticed with ALTIS was there was a certain care to the kind of like fallen comrade, so to speak. Like there were a lot of athletes who were injured and were being retrained. And I thought that was like something very special that you guys were able to do as well. So there's a few questions that are all rolled into there. And really, I think the overarching theme that I'm looking at kind of clarifying, remember that my audience is, some people will understand what sprinting is, but some people are molecular biologists. And so the question is really like, what is sprinting really? That's my question.
Yeah, it's not to be semantic, and let's try to avoid that. It's running as fast as you possibly can. You could say is sprinting, right?
Yeah.
Kinda. It's
Yeah.
not, but it's probably good enough. Like if what isn't sprinting is we're going to do Tabata workout, 20 seconds on, 10 seconds off, 8 times.
Yeah.
You're not running as fast as you can for 20 seconds once, never mind 8 times with 10 seconds recovery. So that's not sprinting. That's just running kind of hard. So sprinting for me is, do you have the capacity to run maximally as fast as your limbs can possibly move, increasing your horizontal velocity as high as you can? Can you still do that? So for me, that's kind of the definition of sprinting. Most people just can't do that, because most people, there is a disconnect between what they had the capacity to do and what they had the coordination to do. They may have the engine, but they're not able to coordinate that engine, or they don't have the chassis that is able to handle the power of that engine, which is, kind of speaks to your last thing there. This is a lot of the athletes that Dan has ended up coaching over the course of his career are those types of athletes. The athletes who have these huge engines that weren't developed, or their chassis were not developed well enough, frequently enough, long enough, sustainably enough, where they could handle it. And they were always breaking down because of it. The most famous one from Dan's perspective is probably Greg Rutherford. Greg Rutherford was a British long jumper, super elite long jumper. Prior to Dan starting coaching him, Greg had 17 hamstring tears in the previous 3 years. Now, you're not going to eliminate all of that overnight, and he still had a few injury problems in the 3 or 4 years that Dan coached him. But I think he went from 17 in 3 years to like 4 in the next 3 years, and in 2012 ended up winning the Olympic gold medal at the London Olympics. Great story. And he's the exact type of athlete that Dan did so well with over the course of his career, and that we were probably best known for early on in our development as a company as well. It's this mismatch between the engine and the chassis, or the capacity to do the thing and the coordination to do that thing. It's always all of that. So it's from a Gen Pop perspective, that's what I'm trying to get across to people. You can't sprint. You just can't. So let's try to find some things that you can do now so that you can safely sprint eventually. Remember what sprinting is. Sprinting is, can you run maximally? Can you run as fast as you possibly can? No, you can't. Almost certainly you can't. So what are the things that you can do to try to prepare yourself for the capacity to do that in the future, whether that's next month, next year, or in 10 years? So that's kind of what I'm talking about quite a lot lately.
So how does like the master's program plug into that? Because ALTIS has that. Maybe you could tell me a little bit about the master's program, because I think that's like an accredited master of science degree in human performance speed. What exactly is it that
Yeah,
people
it's
are
the
coming to you for?
masters in strength and conditioning and coaching. It doesn't have a lot to do with what I just said, actually. It's starting with what we thought were the primary problems in traditional education, especially in coaching and in sports science. Can we do
Okay.
that? It's not good. I don't think it's serving anybody. I don't think it's serving the institutions. I don't think it's serving the students. And it's definitely not serving athletes and teams where those students end up working. So we try to design something that is serving that entire ecosystem. It's better for the
Mm.
teachers, the instructors. It's better for the students taking the courses. It's better for the athletes, so those students will eventually go and coach. And it's better for the organizations that those students will end up working for. So that was sort of our beginning question. And that comes from, well, what are the challenges, the problems that most coaches will be seeing as coaches in the field? And that's we just work backwards from there rather than what the traditional ways has been.
Okay, so what's probably more in line with what we were talking about in terms of speed then is the speed summit. That this is your second one that you're going to be running this year. Is that right?
We have, so as you know, I think when you first came down, we had one of these apprentice coach programs. We have these
Yeah.
in-person small coaching events that
Mhm.
we run 6 to 8 a year of that
Mhm.
would have anywhere from 10 to 30 coaches come and spend some time with us learning all about whatever, speed, health, performance, movement. And that's great. And they've been amazing. And we've iterated on those events and they've become better and better and better over the course of the last decade. And again, just kind of looking around at the entire education ecosystem and the problems within it, we saw that the master's degree program, the masters aren't going, it's not going good. Like people are not learning what they need to be learning to go out and actually work in the field. They have to go and intern for 4 years before they can even get a job. But I felt like, we felt like it was the same in these traditional conferences where you just go and sit in a hall and you get lectured at for 3 days and you're just tired and you leave and maybe you picked up a couple things, maybe you didn't, but it's not, what did Akoff say? Like, something about learning and teaching, and it's just not about learning. It's about teaching, where really these things should be about learning. Build a system in which it's for the actual learner. So this is what we did with the apprentice coach program, which is only, as I said, 10 to 30 people. And then we asked the question, a little over a year ago, can we scale this and actually build a better conference, build something out that we can scale not to 10, 20, 30 people, but to 100, 200, 300, 400, 500 people. So we did one in Chicago last year, a weekend conference, which we called the ALTIS Speed Summit. And we're about to embark on our second one next month, about 3 weeks from now in San Diego in the middle of June.
And how many attendees were there last year?
Just short of 300, about 285,
Okay.
290.
Yeah. And how's it looking for this year?
Yeah, it'll be about the same. Yeah, it's good.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I think that's a good number, like 250 to 300 is about a good number, I think. I
Yeah.
think more than that, it just gets a little bit like 250 people, you can meet everybody. You can have
Yeah.
conversations with everybody. 500
Yeah.
people, 1,000, no chance. Yeah.
And who do you got coming in there to help and present? What topics are they?
Well, yeah, I don't know. Like we've got a lot of really interesting people who are working in the
Mhm.
NBA, in Major League Baseball, in NFL, in college systems, and track. We've got 20 people in total. Matt Price with the LA Kings. We've got people with the Clippers, people with the Atlanta Falcons. It's like a lot of really, really top people. We've got 3 keynote presentations over the course of 3 days, and that's it. Just 3. So people, when they come in, they'll know what the topics are for these 3 hours. And that's it. Everything else is a provocation or a prompt, a question. And it'll be a group of people who will discuss this prompt or this provocation or this question. And they might be debating it. They might have there's this podcast I listen to. It's called Philosophy for Our Times. And it's not all philosophers. It's a lot of philosophers, but some of them are scientists. Some of them are just thinkers. Some of them are not just thinkers. Some are politicians. But they'll have 3 people on stage. They've got a facilitator who facilitates this discussion amongst these 3 thinkers. And there'll be a question, and then each of those 3 thinkers has 3 minutes to answer that question. And then there will be a facilitated debate around their answers. And I find that fascinating. I really do. I feel like I love the debates where they They're super smart people who are coming at this question from totally different ends. And I just love listening to those discussions and those conversations. So that's what I was trying to capture with the Speed Summit for this year, right? So we can actually have interesting discussions rather than just a presenter presenting to you his or her highlights package of what they think about health and performance, which it's not real. It's just not real. It isn't it. You might get a nugget or two, but that's not it. You learn by thinking, by being challenged on the spot right now, asking questions based upon what other people are saying and thinking. So it's for me, that's what we're trying to present here within the Speed Summit.
It's like it's a incorporation of I guess more of like I wouldn't quite say the Socratic method, but more of like a discourse. And it is in a way you don't know what the presentation is going to be about.
No,
like even as the presenter,
right? Exactly. Yeah, it's for sure. It's kind of Socratic, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
amazing.
Oh, it should be fun. I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah. In terms of where you've come from, so like the last 10 years, let's say, what's the unfair question here? What's your vision for the next 10?
Retire? Can I retire? Can I stop working so freaking hard?
No, you won't. You won't do that. I don't think.
No,
What
I
would
mean,
you do if you would retire? So what would you do?
No, I wouldn't retire. I want to do less. Like I feel now I'm doing more and more and more and doing a worse job of all of the things. I want to kind of focus on the 2 or 3 things that I really want to do and do those better. So
what are those?
I don't know, man. It's a really good question. I'm committed to continuing to coach until the 2028 Olympic Games in Los Angeles. I really enjoy coaching still. Like I've got a nice group of athletes, a good young group of athletes, different challenges, really good athletes. I'm enjoying that. As long as I continue to enjoy that and enjoy the people that I'm working with, then I want to continue doing the coaching piece. But that may end in LA. I don't know, because the constraint that comes with that is I have to be with them for 20 to 25 hours a week for 10 and a half months of the year. And I don't like that constraint. You know, one of the most important traits for me is having the freedom to do what I want on my terms when I want to do it. And right now I can't do that. And that's okay. I'm choosing not to. I'm choosing to choose coaching. There's a compromise. But at some point in time, I'm probably not going to want to coach full time anymore because of that. I want to travel more. I want to get out and about and do more consulting. Like I really am. The more over the last 5 or 6 years, I've done much more education, many more conferences, many more consultations with different professional teams and groups and athletes and coaches. And I really, really do enjoy that. And then over the last 2 or 3 years, I've been doing more and more with the general population. I get older, as my friends get older, as my family gets older, when these things become then more and more personally important to me, health, movement, coordination, performance, all of these different things, then some of the things that I think about kind of switch. It's not all about this tip of the spear elite performance anymore. It's also about, hey, can I still feel good? Can my friends still feel good, move well? And what about the rest of these people? And it's rather than just focusing on this couple of dozen people at the tip of the spear, what about the billions of other people and how they live their lives, right? Can I have some impact in that? And I'm kind of enjoying that too, So maybe there's room to do more in that over the course of the next little while. That Human Lab podcast, that's why I did the Rich Roll podcast. That's why I've done more and more of these different types of things. And I do enjoy that. And I'm kind of surprised by that, because a decade ago, I did not like that at all. That wasn't enjoyable to me at all, working with Gen Pop. But now I'm appreciating that a lot more. So the next 10 years will be about, the goal is the same, do cool things in cool places with cool people, but hopefully just a few less cool things in more cool places. Phoenix is an okay place to base, but it's not super cool. It's not great. I don't want to live here 10 months of the year in Phoenix, 9 months of the year in Phoenix, especially in the summer when it's a zillion degrees. That's an answer. That's the only answer I got.
It's let me see if I can be helpful. One of the things that you mentioned was, I know you just said that you want to do less, or more of the things that help you do less. Does the podcast fall into that? Like, does your podcast fall? No, your own, right? So like developing your own messaging, your own format. Maybe it's not at this moment, but is it something that you see yourself taking seriously as a medium to achieve that end, to reach more people around, first principles of how to move, and how to move longer and better? Like, is that a medium you consider?
About 15 years ago, I came across this Canadian consultant named Harold Jorshay. Maybe you know him because he's from out where you are. He used to consult with Canadian military organization, other different organizations, and he talks a lot about knowledge management. And then he's got a framework that I try to operate much of my thinking around. It's called the Seek, Sense, Share framework, where we seek out information, we make sense of that information, and then we share it to whoever, our community of people is. So when I first started blogging in 2010, it was under those auspices. All right, I'm going to try and I'm seeking, I'm seeking all this stuff. I'm trying to learn all this stuff. And then I'm going to try to make sense of it in my brain. And then I'm going to stress test it by sharing it with other people. And it started off with a blog, and then it was Twitter, and then Instagram, and other things, and then became podcasts and presentations and so on. And that public sharing, I think, is a really important piece. Like, I think it's really, really important. And I think it's contingent upon people who are, thought leaders or leaders or whatever to do that piece. You can't just keep it in or keep it within your own little community. I think you have to share it. I think we have a responsibility to do that. Now, when I first started doing that, I've always really enjoyed writing. Like, I love to read. Most people who like to read also like to write. I'm an okay writer. I'm much better now than I was when I first started writing 15 years ago. But that was my choice. That was my vehicle of choice to share what I was making sense of. And then over the course of time, eventually I started, because I said no to a lot of podcasts early days because, it's just, I would prefer to do it this way, And then I started saying yes, and I said yes to our buddy Scotty Livingston, and I did Scotty's podcast, and now I've done a zillion podcasts in the last 12 years now. Who knows? That's a long way to come to this answer. Is I don't know. I don't know if I want to do a podcast, like my own podcast. Like it interests me, but to do that, I want to do that well. I'm like you. Like, if you're going to do something, you want to do it really well. And if I want to do podcasts well, then what is that replacing that I'm already doing? Right now, I can't. It won't replace anything unless I do something that's really small. So I've played with the idea of doing these little mini casts, this like a 3-minute conversation that's based upon a really interesting prompt or an interesting question. And let's have a conversation, and we put the timer on, and we're done in 3 minutes, and I'll release those. So that's one thought that I've had, but I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to have my own podcast. I don't feel like I'm that interesting. I feel like I'm an okay guest on some podcasts. I don't know if I'd be a great host. I don't know.
Yeah.
There's some bad podcasts out there, so maybe I would be better than that. Who knows?
Yeah, you're selling yourself short, or you're making me look by it, but and you're not that interesting. What did we just do for the last hour? Yeah, Stu, I really have a deep affection and respect for what you've been able to do. You've been a great friend and role model, and to have you for the hour time that you're able to share, given everything that I know you've got going on. I just want to take a moment and thank you and let you know how much I appreciate you spending the time here today.
It's always a pleasure to spend time with you, man. I appreciate you. I've always appreciated your guidance and the conversations that we've had over the years as well. And we need to ensure that we continue having those more often than just getting together for a podcast once in a while.
Yeah.
It's been bothering me because I forgot that the Russell Ackoff quote. So in the background here, I've been searching for it. So here it is. The educational system is not dedicated to produce learning by students, but teaching by teachers. And teaching is a major obstruction to learning. I just love that.
The engine and the chassis, man, talk about the simplicity on the far side of complexity. You can be born with a monster engine and a Chevette chassis. And the fact is, you're going to break every time you rev that engine. That's certainly been my experience. That mismatch is where injury lives. And part of it is written in your DNA before you even run a step. Stu is a man obsessed with the fastest humans alive, and now spends more and more of his time on the rest of us, on whether his friends can still move well at 60, on whether you can earn back the right to sprint. That is the heart of the DNA of things. Your genetics set the floor, surely. The environment and your choices, however, decide how much of the room that you have and you come into the world with that you actually use. So, Stuart leaves us here today with one question is, what are you doing today to prepare for the speed you want in 10 years? Thank you to my brother Stu. Thank you to everybody listening. Thank you for joining me on the DNA of Things.